In this video, we're going to be going over the best way to build decks as a free-to-play player in Clash Royale. Building the perfect deck is an art that is really important to master, so in this video, I'm going to be helping you out so that way you can reach 9,000 trophies in no time and also progress on the path of legends. There are three main things that we are going to be covering in this video. First up is some quick tips on progression. Second up is actually building the deck, and then the third is what evolutions you should use. If you end up enjoying this video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and let's get right into it. So first up, let's go ahead and talk about progression. Progression as a free-to-play player can be a lot more challenging, especially with the recent update that Clash Royale had, getting rid of the season shop, but progression is still possible, and you just have to stay on top of things. First things first, your daily lucky drops are a must. You must do all of them every single day. I know some people have 3, some people have 4. I don't really get what that is. I have 4 on my free-to-play account, and every single day I make sure to do all 4 of them. Whether you do the special event game mode, whether you do 2v2, whether you do trophy road, path of legends, anything like that, be sure to get all 4 of those every single day. Next up, community events are absolutely critical. Clash Royale normally runs these crown chases or other community events at least once a week for 3 or 4 days at a time, and the rewards on those will normally have stuff like lucky drops. Sometimes they will have evolution shards, gold crates, and even books. So these are very important. Next up, you gotta finish the pass every single season. Again, on the free side, the rewards aren't the greatest, but you do have 2 wild shards on here, along with quite a few lucky drops, even a 3-star lucky drop at the end. So these are very important for your progression. And also, once you complete the pass, I think it's important to also get as many bonus lucky drops as possible. You get a bonus lucky drop for every 20 crowns that you get after you complete the pass. And again, these start at 1-star, but you never know what you'll actually be able to get from them. They could be 5-star at some point. And then last up, if there are any special game modes in this tab, such as 2v2 ladder, which we have going on right now, be sure to do your best to complete these as well. Now, the rewards on here admittedly are not the greatest, I'll be honest, but it is more progression than you would have otherwise, getting extra common, rare, epic cards, gold crates, and then a lucky drop at the end. That is more progression than you would have if this event was not here. Now, I know that sounds like a lot of Clash Royale that you have to play in order to do that. However, I think if you just dedicate anywhere around 20 minutes a day, I think it is something that you can do on a season-to-season basis. Some days you may have to play a little bit more than others. Maybe if you have some extra spare time on the weekends, you can dedicate more time with that. But it really is important as a free-to-play player to try to maximize every single avenue of progression that you can. So with all of that out of the way, now let's actually talk about building the deck itself and some core principles that are really important to follow. First things first, here on my free-to-play account is the main deck that I have been using recently. It is a 4.1 Mega Knight Ram Rider deck, and it has been working quite well for me. And so with the principles that we're going to go over, I think this deck follows a lot of these principles, but you don't have to build a deck that is as similar to this. There is a lot of freedom that you can have within these principles, so that way you can build a deck that meets your own play style. So overall, I think the most important thing when building a deck is to make sure that it is well balanced and that you have all of your bases covered. So let me explain what a well balanced deck actually means. First things first, don't pick too many of the same card types. You do not need to have E-Barbs, Mega Knight, P.E.K.K.A, and Royal Recruits all in the same deck. There are some people that do, but don't be like them. They all serve similar purposes as primarily defensive cards that have value in counter pushing, but you do not need all of them in the same deck. Pick maybe one at most. Don't use Hog Rider, Battle Ram, Goblin Barrel, and Royal Hogs all in the same deck. These are all win conditions which are really effective at doing damage, but you don't need to have 4 of them in the same deck. That takes away space for you to have other important cards. In that same vein, but on a different scale, don't have all 4 spirits in the same deck. You don't need 4 1 elixir cards. Yes, your cycle is going to be quicker, but that takes away a lot of other room for other cards in your deck. When you build a well-balanced deck, you need to have certain different types of cards within that deck and not too many of one card. Having too many of one particular card can expose you against a lot of matchups and make it so that way you pretty much have no chance of winning. So beyond not picking too many of the same cards, let's go over my other core principles. First up is going to be having 2 spells. I think 2 is the perfect amount. There are some decks that will run 1 spell, some that will even play triple spell, and some of those situations do work, but as a general rule of thumb, 2 spells work. And within these 2 spells, I think you should have 1 big spell and 1 small spell. So in this deck, my big spell is the Fireball, my small spell is the Arrows. Beyond those, you can do Poison Zap, you could do Lightning Barbarian Barrel, you could do Rocket Log, you could even do a 3 elixir combo where you have something like Earthquake and Royal Delivery. There are tons of combinations you can do with spells, but in general, 1 heavier spell along with 1 small spell is a good pairing. However, if you do insist on going the triple spell route, I think Fireball, Arrows, and Zap are a great trio. I also really like the trio of Barbarian Barrel, Tornado, and Poison. This works well in a lot of graveyard decks because those decks have a lot of splash damaging troops, and these 3 synergize really well with that. In general, I think if you're going to go with a 3rd spell, I would say Tornado is probably the most versatile that you could use in that spot. It's really good for King Tower activations, for moving troops around the arena. It synergizes really well with any card that does splash damage, like an Ice Wizard, a Baby Dragon, an Executioner. Tornado is a really great option in that case. You don't even have to use it in triple spells. You can just have that paired with, say, a log and have those be your 2 spells. My next major principle is to have at least 1 win condition in your deck. For those of you that don't know, a win condition is the card that you're going to be relying on to do the majority of damage in your deck. Most win conditions are building targeting units that also can output a lot of damage or can chip away gradually. In this deck right here, my win condition is the Ram Rider. It is a building targeting unit. It has a charge which does a lot of damage, and it has a lot of HP and is really reliable on getting to the tower for most occasions. There are a lot of decks out there, however, that can use 2 win conditions in the same deck. Most of these decks are really fast and based on cycling. A prominent example is Miner Wallbreaker Cycle. In that case, you rely on both the Miner and the Wallbreakers to do damage on the tower. A lot of bait decks use 2 win conditions, such as a Goblin Barrel and a Skeleton Barrel paired together. In the case of bait decks, a lot of them also rely on Rocket as well. If you can't get any damage with your bait cards because your opponent has multiple small spells, then a lot of people rely on Rocket cycling in that case to get damage. Some other common pairings you might see are Miner Balloon, Goblin Giant Sparky, and Lava Hound Balloon. Those are just to name a few, but there are so many different directions you can go with using win conditions, but be sure to have at least 1. Next up, let's talk about buildings. These are great to have, but they are not mandatory. There are 2 building win conditions, with those being Expo and Mortar, and a lot of decks are built around these, but if you're not going to be an Expo or Mortar player, buildings have value, but you have to make sure they fit within your deck. Look at my deck. My deck does not have a building because I don't feel like I need it. Most of the time, buildings are used to stop win conditions such as Hog Riders, Royal Hogs, Ram Riders, Battle Rams, Giants, Golems, things like that. Pull them to the middle, do damage to them while playing other troops around them. However, I don't necessarily feel like I need them. I have the Evolved Mega Knight and Evolved Valkyrie, which are great on defense, paired with the Witch as well to help clean up. Same with Firecracker and Bats, honestly. So with all the defense I have in my deck, I just don't feel like I need a building. The ones that I personally would recommend the most are the Cannon and the Tesla, especially if you can get the evolutions for both of them. I would say the Evolved Cannon is the best defensive building in the game consistently. As of the recording of this video, Goblin Hut is really good, but who knows, it could get nerfed. I think it has that potential. So if you're going to go with any sort of defensive building, I think Cannon is great. It fits well in cycle decks. It's only 3 elixir. Again, it pulls troops and it can do damage, and you can put other supporting troops around it to help out the cannon in terms of defense. Cards that can do splash damage are also very important to consider as well. Throughout a majority of your time in ladder, you'll be playing against a lot of swarm cards, whether that is Bats, Skeleton Army, Barbarians, Goblin Gang, things of that nature. You're going to be playing against them a lot, and splash damaging cards are really good at dealing with them. They are able to target multiple units at once, which most of the time results in them getting a lot of value. Again, looking at my deck, I actually have quite a bit of splash damage. Valkyrie, Mega Knight, Firecracker, and Witch all do splash damage on top of the spells, of course, that do splash damage as well. Then, of course, we have to talk about cards that target air units as well. There are a lot of air troops in Clash Royale, and you need to make sure that you have other troops that can deal with them. This is also another important place where buildings can come into play, especially things like the Tesla and the Inferno Tower, because they can target ground troops and air troops and pull them into the middle. Buildings are very versatile in that regard. Looking at my deck, I have 3 cards that can target air troops. We have the Witch, we have the Bats, and we have the Firecracker. I think this is probably the weakest area in my deck because these air defense troops don't do a lot of air defense, but in the case where I do play against Lava Hound, most of the time my goal with that is to just 3-crown them as soon as possible using all my other cards, so I don't feel like I really struggled that much with other air cards. But if you do want some high damaging air cards, Musketeer, Archer Queen, Dark Goblin, Electro Wizard, they're all pretty good at that. So just to recap, let's go over everything. Tip number 1, don't pick too many of the same cards. Make sure your deck is incredibly well balanced. Let's talk about having 2 spells. We have Fireball, we have Arrows. Boom, covered. At least 1 win condition. Ram Rider, we're covered. The buildings are great, but not mandatory. Again, in this deck, I don't have buildings, but I don't feel like I need one. Splash damage, we got plenty of that. We got Valkyrie, Mega Knight, Firecracker, Witch. We're good. At least 2 cards that can do air defense. We're covered on that. Witch, Firecracker, Bats. Boom. So overall, given those principles, I feel like I have built a well-balanced deck that has served me well, and given the same principles, you can use them to build your own well-balanced deck. Now again, you don't have to build a deck that looks exactly like mine. I showed you plenty of cards that you can use for each of these categories. It's very important to consider your own play strengths and how you like to play Clash Royale. Do you like playing cycle decks that are a little bit faster and are a little bit more high skill? Do you like playing more high cost elixir decks that rely more on heavy units and building up big pushes? Do you like building control decks that are focused on defense and counter pushing? Do you like building bait decks, which are focused on baiting out your opponent's small spells and playing around that? There are so many different deck archetypes that you can use, and it's ultimately important to figure out which one you are the most comfortable with. That will take a little bit of trial and error, a little bit of experimentation, but it is definitely worth it in the long run to figure out what you're actually best at. In general, I have always been a fan of heavier decks. Back in 2017, I was playing Lava Hound and Golem decks. In 2021, I was playing Royal Recruits Royal Hog decks that were 4.3 elixir. I also like playing graveyard decks that are more defensive and control focused. So over time, I have figured out what I like and what I'm good at, and it's really important for you to do the exact same thing. So now with all of those major principles out of the way, let's then shift our focus specifically to talking about evolutions. So when looking at evolutions, of course, you have a lot of options to choose from, and Clash Royale keeps adding new ones every single month. So within all these core principles, how do you know which evolutions to actually use? Ultimately, the biggest thing I think it comes down to is choosing evolutions to the cards you deem to be the 2 most important in your deck. And in that same vein, which evolutions will provide you the most value throughout the course of a game? There are some evolutions that just simply don't provide enough value in my opinion. I think the Evolved Goblin Drill is one of them. On paper, it sounds really nice, being able to spawn 3 separate drills with a bunch more goblins, but in reality, it's pretty easy to counter if you have something like a Valkyrie or a Wizard in your deck that can just deal with the goblins. And also, this takes 2 cycles to get, which is kind of a lot, honestly, for what it does. So I honestly wouldn't recommend this. I just think there's better evolutions you can use. I would honestly say the same thing about the Evolved Battle Ram. Again, on paper, it looks good, just being able to charge through troops and get to the tower. But in reality, a lot of people play Mega Knight in Clash Royale or something like P.E.K.K.A, and that just completely almost negates the value of what the Evolved Battle Ram provides. In general, most evolutions are pretty solid. There are hardly any that I think are bad. But again, it comes down to the ones you feel are the most important. As you can see in my deck, I have 5 cards that are evolved, but the ones that I'm using are the Evolved Mega Knight and the Evolved Valkyrie. The Evolved Mega Knight, I think I will always use. This card will always provide you value on defense. Its ability to punch like that and then jump back on troops and punch again, and repeating that cycle as long as it is there, that is always going to provide value against every single ground troop in the game, basically. Looking at the Evolved Valkyrie, again, she is another great defensive card. She already does splash damage, and then being able to pull cards in closer to deal even more damage is great. And of course, as you can see, she can pull a golem away from a tower. So that is great. You can pair that with other defensive cards to do high DPS. Evolved Valkyrie is great. Now, the other 3 evolutions I have in my deck, I do enjoy. I am a big Evolved Firecracker enjoyer. I think the extra splash damage it does provides a lot of value. But again, on Trophy Road and Path of Legends, so many people use arrows, and it can be pretty easy to kill the evolved firecracker with that. If you are good at baiting out arrows to give you room for the firecracker, then that is pretty solid, but a lot of people are smart with their arrows, so you got to be careful. Same thing kind of applies with the evolved bats. Arrows kind of decimate them, but if you can play around that, they can provide a lot of value. Then we have the evolved witch. I think this one is great. If I didn't have the evolved Valkyrie and the evolved Mega Knight, I would be using the evolved witch 100%. Being able to heal like that is so good. It is insane because her skeletons are pretty much always going to die at some point, and her just being able to recover health from that is absolutely insane. Another point to go along with using evolutions that are important in your deck is to try to use evolutions that are nerf proof, in the sense that regardless of what balance changes they're going to get, they're pretty much always going to be solid. I think evolved Mega Knight and evolved Valkyrie kind of fall into that category. Their core mechanics in terms of what the evolution does will always be good. They will always be good. Same with the evolved firecracker. That splash damage will always be good. Evolved witch always being able to heal will always be good. Same thing with the evolved bats being able to heal. That applies for a lot of other evolutions. The evolved knight with its shield. The evolved cannon being able to have that barrage storm that it has. The evolved royal recruits being able to charge. The evolved wizard with its shield. The evolved hunter with its little net thingy, even though it just got nerfed. The evolved Tesla with its pulsating radius. There are some evolutions that just at their core are always going to be good. In general, I would say these are my favorite 8 evolutions in the game. I feel like with these 8, regardless of what nerfs they receive to their evolved abilities, they're going to be able to provide you with some value. So if you have one of these 8 in your deck, I highly recommend evolving it, or evolve both if you have both of these 8 in your deck. That didn't make sense, but I hope you get my point. Now again, don't worry if you don't have 2 of these specific 8 in your deck. Pretty much every evolution in this game can provide you value, okay? And also if an evolution that you're using does get nerfed to the point where you don't believe it provides you a lot of value, this is where the progression tips come into play. Make sure you do the pass, so that way you get to your 2 wild shards. Make sure you do the community events, so that way you get the evolution shards that might be there. These are all incredibly important things to do. It all cycles back within itself. Oh yeah, and one other thing I completely forgot to talk about is tower troops. My golden rule within Clash Royale is that the Princess Tower should be your #1 priority until you get it maxed out. Once you get it maxed out, if you want to experiment with the Cannoneer, Duchess, or Royal Chef, by all means, go for it. But the Princess Tower is by far the most stable and most consistent of the towers. All 3 of these others can provide you value in certain matchups. Royal Chef can work decently well with beatdown decks, being able to upgrade the cards. Duchess is pretty decent against cycle decks on occasions. And Cannoneer, I don't know about the Cannoneer, but please just heed my warning. Focus on your Princess Tower. These others, you don't have to upgrade them at all. Please don't. Ignore the fact that I have level 14 Cannoneer. I shouldn't have done that. With all 3 of these tower troops, at one point they were all really good, but then they all ended up getting nerfed really badly. So for those people that did invest their resources into these tower troops, they kind of got screwed. Princess Tower, I think, will never get balanced. I don't think it will ever be buffed. I don't think it will ever be nerfed. You can count on putting your tower troops into the Princess Tower. It is going to serve you well long term. But ultimately, I think those are all the major points I wanted to cover. If you did enjoy this deck building guide, then please be sure to leave a like. I would greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions on anything I said, or if you want me to take a look at your deck, then leave a comment down below and I will be sure to look at it. If you're new here, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate it. Be sure to watch this video right up here. There will also be a playlist on screen with the rest of the free to play series, so be sure to check those out as well. But that's it for me, and I will see you all in the next video.